Why is the OmniBlog so many different topics, and why do I have it as my all-in-one blogging website, personal brand, all in one place? So this video is more of just like trying to explain to the world, why did I make certain posts? Why did I do this decision when it came to my blogging platform and the CMSs that I've used? And essentially, I'm just going to go through all 900 of my blog posts, not like one by one. I'm not going to be boring you that much. But if I just figured I'd make this because I just got really excited when I went on my site. I looked at all the different topics, even on the most recent posts. I started scrolling through some of my posts. I was like, I want to make some content about this, like a little bit of meta content to explain what was my mindset behind certain posts, because I think that'd be very helpful to a lot of newcomer bloggers, or maybe if you just care about the content I've made, then perhaps it would be interesting to you. And I've actually spent a long time, since about 2013, 2012-ish. I don't remember exactly when my first blog post was, but I've been spending that much time on this kind of journey. And I figured, let's go through all my blogs. And I'm also going to mention too the times that I've revamped them or moved them and that kind of thing. And I think that this kind of meta commentary will be helpful for a lot of bloggers who are either starting out or are conflicted with the sense of, why did I make this decision? And maybe you're trying to decide, like, which niche should you go into. Well, who's to say you can't do all of them? They always say niche down, and yes, while at first that is important, and at some point you might niche down again because you get really interested in something. I do notice that there is a pattern, especially with the most successful creators, where you have different varieties of actions you can do. And I talk about this in the hourglass analogy, where you kind of go wide and you find something you like, and you go narrow, and then you go wide again, and you'll see that kind of over the course of this video. So I'm just going to share my screen here. This is basically the start. I don't think I've really blogged anything before this, and technically speaking, you can see the date there's 2017. There's a reason for that, and really all the first handful of posts are about the United Living Construct and self-development, and a little bit of not like poetry, but kind of just getting creative in a sense, and the Fireside Codex and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of overlapping and revamping and remaking, and what happened was I had about, 24 blog posts on my United Living Construct blog back in the day, and eventually I moved them to WordPress. I moved them to Medium, then WordPress. They originally were on WordPress. I moved them to Wix, I think, and then Medium, and then WordPress, and then eventually they were kind of just sitting there for a while, and then I put them on Ghost when I moved to Ghost. And at the same time, around that time too, 2017-ish, I was on, I think it was called airtext.xyz, which was like a Web3 platform where you could write stuff. And this is like late 2010s. And so I basically just created a blog for a personal journal, and that's where the Fireside Codex came about. So I had this conflict of interest where I wanted to make posts about the modular degree, which is what my main niche was, like self-education, that kind of thing. And then I also wanted to make stuff that were more personal journal entries and kind of going into that kind of diary of sorts, or Leonardo's notebooks. And that was kind of the motivation behind the Fireside Codex. So at the beginning here, a lot of this was either modular degree, like my professional content, or something along the lines of like the United Living Construct or the Fireside Codex. So it's a lot of more jumbled stuff around this time. I'm still kind of finding my way. And you can see here, I started talking more about PolyInnovator and education. And then I had remade a lot of the United Living Construct blog posts, which is why there's a lot here. And also all these different thumbnails I made after COVID, I think, for the most part. So I had remade a lot of the old pictures for the old posts to kind of bring them up to date with my more modern aesthetic. And I also went through and revamped most of them as well at some points over the years. I think this one in particular had a couple tweaks, and also in some of these posts, even though they're not a living construct, this one doesn't even have a tag, they were along the lines of PolyInnovator and ULC. So I kind of was like, okay, let's just do both. Oh, you can't really quite see them. This is what I meant right here. Yeah, here you go. I forgot my pictures above them. And then I start getting more and more into the 4 pillars and self-education. You can kind of see that development there. I also was talking about the 4 pillars, and I wanted to talk about video games. So you can start seeing the start of poly-innovator gaming here as well. And over the time, you'll start seeing more and more topics coming out. This is still 2018, 2019. And it's kind of crazy how it jumps from 2018 to 2019. I started blogging a lot more, and there's definitely a pattern here, and it's more so around the self-education. That was really kind of what I wanted to do. I guess 2020 is when I really kind of started branding it as the Fireside Codex, and so even though I was already kind of doing that beforehand, I still wanted to get more into it. And I also moved to Substack for one of the first times in I think like 2019 or so, and that's when I started doing like the Corona Lime and the Fireside Codex and the content. And these posts are shorter, but they're just kind of an expressive idea. And so over the course of this next year or so, I started talking more and more about content creation, and this is like one of the first posts in the content polymath arm. And this series right here, the multi-potentialite one, is actually kind of funny. I think it took me a long while before I actually made the next post in this mini series, the multidisciplinary spectrum. But I made like 7 of these, and it was very important. I need to probably remake them. But it's interesting about, like, I was still trying to do the Omni content around this time. This is also around the time where I started doing interviews. So literally around May 2020 is when I started doing interviews, which is why the next post isn't until like August. So that whole summer, I was just doing interviews. More stuff about technology and getting more into the weeds about certain topics like information architecture. And as you can see here is the first post with the Now page update. So in August, I started doing the Now page, which was an actual like about page on my site. You can see like over here, like the about page. So the Now, like as of what is happening now in my life, for a few months there, I think here and the next one's like somewhere around here too. Basically, for the first few months, I just had a page, and that page was just bland. It got replaced every month. And after a few months, I was like, no, wait a minute. I want to keep these. I want to keep them going. So I ended up actually turning it into a series and retroactively going back through. Luckily, there was saved history on that page, and I turned those pages, or each version of the page, into blog posts. And then from then on, I started making more posts. And so that's where you can start seeing more here. And so literally for like a whole month, that's all I really made. And as time goes on, again, I'm trying to skip through a lot of this because this is still 2020. And as the years go on, I get more and more and more content output. So I'm trying to expedite this video so it's not going to be going through each particular post one by one. You can see one of the first posts about swimming. So it's still technically under exercise tag, but this is the start of that swimming niche. And over time, I'm getting more and more about content, more and more about education and gaming. And it's really interesting how I need to go through all this and like retag things. So this should be video game tag, and it's only the Fireside Codex. And the swimming one should be swimming tag, but it's only exercise. So that's interesting. Maybe it is. Let me double check this. Oh, it is. Okay, cool. It is tagged the right way. I was just kind of concerned. I was like, why is that not the right tag? So it's just the dominant tag. And so as time goes on, I think this kind of era was not necessarily my best work, but there was a lot more creativity and experimentation. And like I definitely found myself really exploring new options. Like this is also when I really was getting into Notion. I got into Notion before this, but this is when I started writing about it too. And I got really mad at Uber and deleted my account, and they make it hell to delete your account too. And what's really interesting is like I think these two posts here were actually on Kotaku. So back in the day, Kotaku was kind of like a more public forum. You could actually make your own blog post on there. It wasn't just kind of like reporters. And so I had a couple blog posts on Kotaku, never got really any attention, but I took them off of there and decided, let me just get some actual attention on these posts. And I found myself remaking them, I think adding a little bit more details to it. Also, this is one of my posts that's one of my favorites, and because no one talks about Ada Lovelace, but she was really amazing, and this was like one of the first ones I was like, okay, let me start highlighting certain polymathic people, and that's what I did here. And then I was still kind of thinking in the United Living Construct format here with this one, as oh, this is so exciting. This is the start of the PIOS, essentially, and there's a lot of stuff that I was doing in this time, and I was still trying to figure out like how does this system work. And so I was starting to make content about it to try to like really formulate my ideas. And so I wanted to make a post explaining what the OmniBlog is and PolyPro and music. So these are kind of like the definition posts, like the polymath definition one here. And yeah, it's kind of funny because there's a lot of like really experimentation over the years that I kind of forgot about. And there's even weird topics like global growth hacking. It's not something that I do, but it's one of those things where no one talks about it. It's not something that's very well discussed, and I think that more people needed to talk about it. So this was the start of that. Maybe I need to make another post in this series. Again, swimming, this is the start of that paid membership on this site. So even for the last like 5 years, I've been trying to do that, and I'm still going to keep adding more and more to it. more definitions, some creative thoughts, and getting more into technology. So the Attack of the Ghost site was really interesting. Basically, as soon as I joined up with, not as soon, I had moved to Ghost and in like 2019. So I'm not sure exactly what happened here, but I think the CDN from Cloudflare basically had the cache of my old WordPress site, and out of nowhere, that old site actually came in and overwrote what my new site was like. So it had the menu of Ghost, but the actual website underneath it was WordPress. It was really scary and really weird. I was like, what's going on? So I just had to clear the cache, and I eventually fixed it. And while this review is still old, it probably needs to be redone at this point. It is interesting to me how, like, even back then, I was still trying to make affiliate marketing content and stuff like that. Also, again, one of my more non-conformist posts. We're getting to the 7th now page update, more definitions. Again, these are a little bit more like baseline stuff, and I really wanted to get more into some more advanced stuff like smart cities and stuff like that. More gaming. Again, is this properly tagged? Okay, it is. Just wanted to make sure. And this is my mentor, so I wanted to make a post about him. Another person, even though it's a fictional person, that's a polymathic person I wanted to make a post about. Yeah, and this was, I forgot about this. So essentially, I was doing these now page updates, which are monthly posts, but I also did a quarterly post, or like the second half of the year kind of thing. I think I was going to make these a regular thing, but at the time it was too complicated and I really didn't know how to do it. And I didn't actually even have quarterly notes that I was doing. Maybe now that I have quarterly notes, I could do that, but I don't want to necessarily put my private notes up for public talk. So I don't know. Depends on how I go about doing it. And then the Make Me a Polymath one was interesting. I found a cool website. I think it was actually depreciated. It was no longer available, so I had to go in like the web archive. And same with, maybe not this one, but this one was definitely web archive. These are two websites that were either about success or polymathy, and I wanted to highlight them. And so again, I was experimenting with new formats and trying new things. This was a post that I had made a long time ago. In fact, I think it was actually staying on Medium for a long time. I didn't actually move it over, but I remade it and reformatted it. And it was one of my first huge resource posts that I ever made. And it's interesting to me how, like, I was really trying to find the best alternative to Notion. I could not find it. And so, or actually just really, like, that's how I settled on Notions, because I found all these different tools. And again, really interesting topics like the art of digital productivity, some that I probably need to bring back, but I just found that this endeavor was so amazing. Like, I just love blogging. I love making content. In fact, this video started out as a blog post. I'm going to still make a blog post, but I really wanted to have a visual guide over the course of the years. We're still only in 2021. There was a little mini series I did that was based off a quote from Kung Fu Panda, and I think it's also like a Taoist quote. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. And I wanted to make these a connected series, essentially. So again, the whole multi-potentialite thing earlier, you can finally see how I did the eventual series for that multidisciplinary spectrum. So I had this mini-series, I had this mini-series, and I'm doing them more and more. Speaking of mini-series, the different seasons of my show. So the first few 4 or 5 seasons had solo casts. Like this video here, it's more visual heavy, but at some points I might actually make a video kind of like this, kind of off the cuff, and I would turn that into a podcast as well. And so I would take this audio and pop it on there. Nowadays, I'm focusing more on just interviews. But for the longest time there, I was like, I want to make sure people can actually see that I had solo episodes of that season. So I went in and made a post for every single season for just the solo episodes. And then down the line, I make more about the interviews as well. So over the years, I tried to change the design of the Now page updates. And I think the most recent one's probably pretty cool. And I had a lot more, the hourglass effect. That one's like what I was talking about at the beginning of the video there. I need to make more posts about the hourglass. So, there's so much here. A lot of stuff about self-education, and I really wanted to get kind of back into that niche, because I think around this time I felt like I was leaving that niche too much. And I have another post that was kind of like smart city development. This was one of my favorite paid posts I ever made. I think I actually made it free eventually for people because it's so good. I love it so much. This is like one of my favorite posts I've ever made. I love Kung Fu Panda and I love the philosophy behind it. I wanted to tell people that I'm across the board on every platform, getting into the whole monikers about T-shape and generalist, that kind of thing. And this one's probably not in the right tag. Yeah, it's not. I'm gonna have to go through all these and make sure they're all in the right tag. I might almost need to make a tag just for Pokemon at this point because I have like a dozen posts about Pokemon. There's another one. That's crazy. And when Glass.co first came out, I wanted to make a post talking about it, get people over there. Another post like the Kung Fu Panda one, it's one of my paid posts. I really want to make these really interesting and in-depth posts. I thought that would be pretty cool. My roommate who made me my intro jingle for a lot of my earlier videos, I wanted to give him a shout out as well. And so there's just so many different topics here. Oh, and here we get to see the start of the swimming newsletter. That's so much fun. And so I really wanted to get more people around that topic as well, since that's something I'm an expert in. And yeah, over time, another mini series that was really cool, the focus of a polymath. I thought that was really interesting for people to do. Learn about, the exercise niche. I don't even know what this is about. That's funny. Yeah. These two posts, oh my God, 2022. I came up with these ideas back in like 2017, 2018, and I wanted to make them. I didn't make them for years. This is finally when I got back on track with the Omni content 2 years after doing interviews. That was really frustrating. Let's see. This is when I first started the content repurposing newsletter, the content polymath. And as you can see, there's more and more content creation based stuff, more now page stuff, more gaming. I compared all the different newsletter platforms at the time. Ghost is still the best. Yeah, early on, content creator posts, more knowledge management, more polymathy. This is one of my other better posts in the polymathy niche. There's a lot of technology posts that kind of started arising around here. Oh, this one's kind of cool. Alternate Pokemon games. And that was back in 2023. There's a lot more now. I might need to make another post on this. Again, I might need to make a whole tag just for Pokemon at this point. And I started doing way more in the polymathy newsletter as well at this time. And I really wanted to keep doing more this year. In fact, I have a post I need to probably make today. Let's see. I started doing a little bit more reviews of different content repurposing tools. That was kind of where I started that content newsletter. What happened there? Something came up. Interesting. Oh, that was just this. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, this is all just newsletters at this point. So content, swimming. I don't think I did much in the way of polymathy at this point in time. I was just doing content and swimming. I was kind of lacking on that one, and I really wanted to get back to it. This was another really cool project that no one really knows about, so I wanted to make content about it. Let's see. This was an experiment of doing basically a video post on my site, and it didn't really quite work out, but I really wanted to highlight the story that Johnny had shared. More content around the polymathy niche and swimming, and I basically started doing all three newsletters pretty continuously here, which is great. This was one of my best times here. And while I still needed to kind of get better at it, I think that this was a good example of when I was kind of firing on all cylinders as best as I could. This is a really cool series, the content tech stack. Excuse me, the content about my tech stack, I mean. So essentially, I had a kind of thing that I would do as a young lad where I'd be like, what's in Dusty's pockets? And it was a little game I played with people at high school and middle school or whatever, because I always had weird stuff in my pockets, whether it was a yo-yo or like candy, or at one point I pull out a whole soda and like people just were like, how do you feel all that in your pockets? Well, it became kind of an interesting little thing because I'd always have something interesting, like a little Game Boy or something like that too. And I always had stuff. And so I wanted to make a series where I shared my tech stack. Now, it's been going on for a while. Basically, every quarter I make that kind of post. So again, more newsletters. I definitely was focusing more on swimming around this time too, trying to get the content newsletter off the ground and trying to be consistent with the polymathy newsletter. Here's a really interesting series where I try to kind of think ahead, almost like futurism in a way. Let's see. There's a lot of them, actually. Another tech stack post, Q4. And so there's a lot of patterns that you can start seeing over the course of this time where I was trying to make sure all my newsletters were consistent, but at the time, as you can see, I was not really blogging hardly at all. I did a paid post and I did a regular blog post, and that's about it. Most of these are all just newsletter posts. Then again, I did do this major series that was kind of like taking a lot of my time. So yeah, there's interesting like topics like being a polymathic content creator. Again, no one's talking about these kind of things, and so I wanted to take an opportunity to do so. There was a really cool idea of like turning Reddit into a university. It was much cooler back then. So I mentioned earlier the Polycast seasons. I probably need to go through and make this for season 7. Actually, I probably did. If we scroll up, I'll probably see it. And so the interview started in season 2. That's why it's the first one. And then I just basically made a post even though I made a post already for season 3 for all the solo episodes, this one's for the interviews. Oh, we're actually getting pretty modern, 2024. And so there's a lot of really cool posts like Ikigai, and that's the macro alignment on your PIOS. And so I wanted to make some posts about that. We're starting to get more standard with the Now page design. Some more kind of personal articles here. I don't like how I shared the same thumbnail for this, but oh well. Some more like weird posts. Yeah, we're almost at the end here, folks. We're at the home stretch. And so some of this was like, okay, I think this was my personal blog that I had made and I moved over. And then I was trying to remake the gaming stuff, and eventually I moved stuff back. So you can see we still have a decent amount of space here, but that's because I had consolidated a lot of my external blogs together. And so I actually made multiple versions of this, I think, over the years, because I was like, here's my experience on Substack, here's what happened in Substack. Because I've been on Substack about 5 different times now with like 5 different newsletters. And usually what happened was, instead of keeping them on Substack, I actually just kind of brought them over and kind of closed the fold and brought them over to this site. There's season 7. Let's see. Career skill trees, again, an interesting topic. I wanted to be consistent with my newsletters again, so I made a series about my swimming levels that I had came up with for how to swim, and so that way I could make them kind of all at once and schedule them out ahead of time. So again, you can start seeing that systematic, episodic thinking even around this time too. I had a start here page, and I wanted to turn it into a blog post to make it easier to actually find it. It just depends on like the URL format. Let's see. I was celebrating the 700th. Now I'm basically at my 900th. I was thinking about Octopath Traveler and what that would be like for a third game. Ironically, they went with a prequel, not a third one, but they'll probably have a third one eventually. Let's see. Oh, so this is cool. I basically made a video game series that I wanted to come up with, and actually started coding it, started figuring out the assets, and I started making devlogs. I think this is actually the intro post. There's actually a post after this that talks more about each of them. But basically I made devlogs each month or so, even though I wasn't really doing much, but maybe I'll do it again down the line. And so that's really interesting. And so it's definitely fun to like have that experience, and I brought it over here so people can still see it. But that was a creature that was supposed to be like the title creature of the game. I thought that was really cool. It is AI generated, but it's really good. Let's see. More gaming stuff. This is when I brought the gaming post over, actually, because I wanted to bring it all in the fold. I was still doing content posts, still doing swimming and polymathy. Another Substack post. I've had love-hate relationship with them over the years. Let's see. And this is around the time where I was starting to make my separate website for the content polymath, but I brought it back over and brought it into the fold. And so now we're kind of getting more towards the modern day. This is getting towards the end of 2025. I hosted a polymathy panel talking about my live streams. Here's an explanation of all the newsletters that I have on this site, which is a lot. Let's see. Sometimes I make these posts to try to get people's attention about like hire me or making like share my experience. This was a resource post that I came up with, like, well, here's all the different smart glasses that I've come across. Another Substack post. It's funny. This one's more recent. I definitely was really excited about this one. This one's years in the making. That's why I really like it. And now we're getting towards basically the newest coming to the fold. So I made a Substack for the content polymath and eventually realized I don't like it anymore. So I brought it all back onto my main site here, and that was really cool. I definitely really enjoy having all of these here. And here's the new style format for the Now page updates. Where's the first one? Did I post that much? Yeah. Okay, here's down here. So yeah, now we're up to the modern day, and I have a lot of plans. I have basically every day planned out for content. I was not planning on making this post, video, or written, but I was really excited, and I wanted to share my excitement with you. And right now, what I'm gonna go back to Facecam. So just leaving you on this. This was not necessarily an informative video, but it was more just sharing my journey with you because blogging was the first thing that I did. Eventually I started doing podcasts and eventually I started doing videos, and now I've done countless of all of them. But written has been my main thing, and while I made this video first before the blog post, ironically, it was more because I wanted to see that journey. I was going to go ahead and scroll through this anyways. I thought I might as well record the process and kind of show you my nostalgia. And it's interesting too because you can see the evolution of the ideas that I've talked about over the years. A lot of them have just basically stayed the same. The 4 pillars philosophy has been the same since the United Living Construct days. But the PIOS has evolved quite a bit, and it was kind of like a whole different format. It was more about self-eduvement, so education and as the foundation, improvement as the consistency factor, and then the exponential factor of self-development. And that's kind of where those 3 principles came into my notion, and that's how I formulated my actual overarching dashboard and learning mechanism, input and output for my production level. And that's where the PIOS came from. And you can see that development over time. You can also see the evolution of the polymathy niche that I've done. And there's a lot of posts that I have planned. I get so many. It's crazy how much I have planned. And I hope that I can get them done this year, at least most of them. Because my kind of mindset is like, what if I almost got hit by a car yesterday? Someone wasn't paying attention. She almost turned right into me, right? This is my legacy here. And while I don't know if my website will stay up if I die tomorrow, it's one of those things where there is a lot of content here. I want people to be able to appreciate it. I might turn this all into a book one day so people can see that journey. It'd be kind of a jumbled book, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. And then the process of content creation over the course of more than a decade and a half. There's so much changes that happened, and yet one of the few consistencies was Ghost. This is why I always say that Ghost is the best one. I'll even leave an affiliate link down below if you want to use Magic Pages to host your Ghost instance like I do. But it's crazy to me how many posts that I've made, and yet I still have so many more that I want to make, so many more that I've scheduled even, and then so many more that I have planned. And so I hope that this journey that you got to see with me here inspires you to kind of be able to just you don't have to pick one thing. It's okay that you don't pick one thing. Your website might be jumbled, but eventually you'll kind of settle down on something, and then you'll settle down on something else, and you'll kind of flesh out and start spreading out like a skill tree rather than one singular pathway.